Welcome. I am here today with my longtime conference friend, Dr. Wendy Widder, and want to talk about her new book that's just about to come out. I have a pre-publication copy of it. Um, Old Testament Prophets, the Conscience of God's People. I have read it uh, cover to cover and very carefully, and it is an outstanding book. So I wanted to introduce you to this book and just have a chance to ask Wendy a couple of questions so that you could hear from her. And I want to admit at the front end, I'm an editor for this book. And so there was two kind of things going on with this book. This is part of a series. And so this volume has to introduce, I think, 17 books of the Bible. It's the worst case scenario in the series because there's a chapter for each one. And one of our main goals of the series was to make these books short. So we didn't tell Wendy, but we all discussed. The publisher and Mark Strauss, my co-editor, said, we're willing to give her 10 or 20,000 extra words to write this, but we decided she's such a good author that we wouldn't. We'd wait to see what happens because we thought she might actually hit it under the wire. And amazing, because we all struggled. Even the person that only had four books of the Bible, they went over. So we all went over our limits except for Wendy. And that's brings me to my second point about her. Wendy's been kind enough to proofread for me things over the years and give me some scholarly feedback, especially in her area of expertise on Daniel. Her Daniel book is much thicker than this one that she just wrote. And I was embarrassed. I told Mark Strauss this as we were hiring Wendy, like, I'm embarrassed because she's the best author I know. So, like, what am I supposed to say to her as an editor? Like, great job, because she writes everything perfect, and she has such an outstanding sense of scriptural interpretation. So, anyway, I was glad Wendy agreed to do this and that she forgave all of my things that I said to her as an editor. Well, Wendy, why don't you tell whatever you want to tell about your academic ministry and introduce yourself to anybody who's going to view this.
Well, first of all, you overspeak and you're too generous, and thank you. But yes, I appreciate that. But I'm anyway. I think one of the reasons, Gary, that I'm able to meet my word counts is because my employment these days and these years is as an editor. So I am well practiced in cutting out extra words.
Because that's what you do.
With some projects, I joke to my husband that I need a dumpster in the office to just throw all the extra words in there because there's a lot of them.
Mm-hmm.
Because academics like to use their words. So,
Yeah, I think what people don't know, a lot of people that don't write books don't know. Most always we have trouble stay. We don't have trouble filling the pages. We have trouble. We always get asked by the publisher to cut stuff out.
yeah, it's much harder to write tight and fewer words. And the same is true with sermons. If your pastor's long-winded, it might be because he didn't have enough time in his week to go back and edit himself. It's
Ooh, low
just part.
blow.
Yeah, no, but it's true. And yeah, I mean, some pastors are just long-winded, but sometimes they don't have the time in what they're doing and all the ministries they have and responsibilities to go back through it a couple more times because it's hard work to cut your precious words.
It really is. And I think that when we all go through seminary, we have the opposite perspective because most of us are worried about what's the minimum page count or word count.
Mhm. Yeah. And honestly, academics and authors have a lot of knowledge and a lot of research and it's so hard to not share all of it and to be able to
Right.
distinguish what's most important and what's not. And that's hard. And that's why editors have jobs.
Yeah, and we need it because there's a lot of books where we need more editing.
Yes. So that's what I do. I edit
Okay.
mostly academic, Christian academic books, textbooks primarily. So.
All right. Well, thanks, Wendy. The subtitle is kind of interesting to your book, Old Testament Prophets. The subtitle is the conscience of God's people. What do you mean by that?
Yeah, and specifically it's the covenant conscience of God's
Sorry, I just
people.
said it
Yeah,
bad.
so well that's important. That tells us that directs us to what I'm talking about. So the prophet's ministry overlays what we would think of as the Old Testament story. So sometimes I think if you're reading through the canon and you get to Isaiah, you're like, well, what on earth is all of this until the end of the Old Testament? Because those books, in some ways, you could just sort of take them back and put them over that storyline because the prophets
Mm,
are speaking into the history and the narrative and the experiences of God's people who have covenanted with God at his invitation
hmm
to be his people and to be his unique people. And part of that, well, it meant to live in this relationship where he had laid out instructions for how to be a community that loved him and loved each other and represented him to the larger world. That was their role. And they didn't do it very well. And the prophet's task was to come along and say, look, remember, this is the God who has saved you. This is the God who's
mm,
redeemed us and loves us and calls us into this wonderful relationship. And here's all the things that we're doing that are keeping us from enjoying the blessings of that. So they played the conscience, just reminding the people of what they knew or what they had forgotten, or sometimes even what they had not been taught because it had just been lost.
mm. And that's really helpful because a lot of times, so even that subtitle to kind of get people to think in terms of what the prophets are speaking into. And I think the way you framed that is helpful also. A lot of times we do struggle, ordinary Christians, when we get to the prophets because, yeah, for the rest of the Old Testament, it's just somebody talking. And so the hard part is to contextualize it when someone doesn't know the storyline. So I like the way you said it, that we have to kind of go back and put that into the prophets, put them into the storyline that came before, so that
Mhm.
that's what they're speaking to is the people in the storyline of
Yeah.
the earlier books of the Old Testament.
I've heard some people compare it to just listening to one side of a conversation. And if
Mm.
you don't know what the other side is, you really can't get a handle on what's going on. So when we hear the prophets speaking, like, what are they talking about? Who are they talking to? And what are those people saying back? And it helps if you have that history and that narrative in place to know, oh, that's what's going on.
Yeah, I mean, that's why your book is so helpful because I think a lot of Christians are used to the letters, and we get that we're only listening to one side of a conversation there. But in the New Testament letters, they're not typically talking in poetry, where that's sort of
Yeah.
the normal, this lyrical
Yeah.
discourse. Well, another question for you is what most surprised you when you were doing the research and writing this? Because I know you've thought about this and you're a specialist in Daniel, so I know you've thought about the prophets for a long time, but what most surprised you in this project?
I don't know if it's surprise as much as every time, whenever I have time and am devoted to the prophets and specifically the minor prophets, I think because they're smaller and they're more digestible and approachable, um, I am just convicted by how relevant they are
Hmm
and how they speak today. um, I think it's easy for us to look at the Old Testament people and, well, come on, get rid of those idols, tear down those high places. For goodness sake, it's so obvious that you're doing the wrong thing. And we kind of I sit in judgment of them. Like, how hard could this have been?
Mm,
And yet, it does not take terribly long when you don't have to think very far in your own life, probably, to think,
hmm
oh, yeah, those are idols. Yeah, I don't have a high place for it, but that's an idol.
mm,
Whether it's an opinion or a belief or your politics or your denomination or your whatever it is, we've got them in plentitude. And they're very hard to get rid of.
mm.
And so I think the prophets are pointing at me. And it's hard to write about them because I'm like, stop talking to me.
Yeah, I know when I'm teaching, if I get two sections of the prophets in a semester, that it's just weighs down on me by the end of the semester because of how convicting it is to have to work through this. And I think you're also right in this other the way you started. Uh, we don't often I guess study the prophets as much as we should, but it's when you talk about their relevance, it's so much of a shame that we don't spend more time in the prophets as Christians. This is such a needed part of the
Mhm.
Bible today, but it's one of the really one that doesn't get enough attention.
Yeah. And that's because it's hard. It's culturally hard. It's the literature is difficult. The context is difficult. So it's hard. It takes extra work.
Yeah, but I think I'm just putting one more plug in. I mean, that's where your book is so helpful because it's short, but it is an on-ramp for each one of the prophets, and it really can help folk with that. Um, Maybe one last question, because I know we're just doing a short talk here, but what's what do you think is the biggest misunderstanding that modern Christians have with the prophets?
Well, I think in part it's that we don't have an understanding of them. So
That's
you
pretty
get
good.
you read the Psalms and you read the narratives and the stories and those are all good. But when you get to Isaiah, it's like, okay, I'm just going to jump to Matthew, understandably. But we don't have much of an understanding of them, and so therefore we don't think them relevant. And all the things that I talked about, and what surprised me about them,
Mm,
the
mm.
convicting and all that. So I think we just don't understand them. And there's so many other things to understand and work on that that one gets left.
Wow, that's not what I thought you would say, but I agree with that. I I thought you were going to say that a lot of times people look at the prophets and the word prophet makes us think of prediction.
Hmm.
And
Well,
um,
that's one too. Yes, that's a good one too.
but I'll take it. That's not the big misunderstanding. That's maybe a second understanding that they're more about the here and now, not so much about the by and
Yeah,
by.
yeah,
But
yes.
but your point is even more important that maybe everyday Christians don't even get puzzled by the prophets because we just don't bother anymore.
Mm.
Well, anyway, this is a wonderful book, Wendy. I love it. It has helped me. Um, I am planning to use it as the required book on the prophets in my prophets course moving forward. This is just an outstanding book that has, I can't say enough because each one of your chapters opens up the major and the minor prophets. And we even made your life a little bit harder. Daniel's usually with the Ketuvim or the writing, we put Daniel in, which is your specialty. So that part was probably not hard. But we also put Lamentations in this book. So, oh, so is it 17? It might be more chapters than that. It's a really hard
I
book
think
to write.
it's 17 plus an introduction.
Wow. Amazing. Anyway, thank you, Wendy, for just chatting for just a few minutes. And especially thank you for this book. This is a terrific book that I'm really encouraged by anyone who will read the prophets with it because it'll open them up in a new way.
Hmm. Thanks.